and welcome to the Kemetic How-To Guide for Egyptian Pagan and Kemetic practitioners. I'm your host, Sharon. This month, it's back by popular demand. The insane book reviews. Are you ready to shred some really bad ancient Egyptian books? Maybe literally? I am, so let's go. This book is Ancient Egyptian Magic by Anne Christie. It was published in the UK in 2003, so it is 20 years old as of this year, which still kind of trips me because I'm thinking, wait a minute, I remember conventions I went to in 2003. But anyway, this book was actually recommended for review by my dear folks on Discord. So if you want to join the fun, check out the Kemetic Reform server on Discord. So shout out to you guys. Now, first off, this book has a lot of photos in it, not just in the cover, but throughout, that are a little out of focus, a little blurry, to give it that ooh, kind of mysterious look. But several of the captions in here are just wrong. And actually, it was the Discord folks that pointed out on page 8, you have a carving here. This is probably from Kom Ombo. It's Sobek and Hathor. But the caption says, carving with jackal-headed Anubis left and Isis right. You can't tell a crocodile from a jackal? Now, I bet I know what happened here, because we're going to talk about another book that has some issues with captions in it. You see, when people have a publisher put together a book, somebody else designs the cover, somebody else handles the layout. When you self-publish, you are master and commander of your entire project, be that for good or ill. Well, someone is helping you with a project like this, be that for good or ill. And I think some folks here didn't know what the heck they were doing. Because sometimes you can look at books and you can tell that, like, one caption goes with the next image, or so on. So it's an error. You can tell that they, somebody just didn't see until it went to print. But there are other times like this where you're just like, really? Another quibble that I have with this book, because we're talking about magic here, it retells some Egyptian tales of magic, one of which we discussed earlier in the year when we were talking about lunar deities, and the story of Setna-Kayamwas. That's in here, but this doesn't give an exact translation. It sort of retells the story and it fudges some details. For example, when Setna-Kayamwas meets the lady Tabubu, given as Tabubua in here, instead of being described as the daughter of a priest of Bast, mistress of Ankatawi, which is what the original story says, this just says Tabubua is a daughter of Bast. And it also kind of downplays Setna's, shall we say, state of excitement in interacting with Lady Tabubu. In doing so, it takes some of the impact and some of the meaning out of the original story. And there are other stories in here too, that it kind of tries to soften the edges on some of the details in it, and in doing so, you kind of take something out of the original story. That's why I really prefer reading it, a translation of the original. Yeah, there are references to things that, have us scratching our heads, like, having a forked stick in your hand and a lighted brazier on your head. That doesn't have as much impact to us today as it would have back then, but still, I'd like to know, because, something might come along, I might read something else that makes it click and make sense, so. Don't sugarcoat this for me, darn it. But the biggest problem that I have with this book, it's basically your run-of-the-mill Western magic book with an ancient Egyptian window dressing. you know, you get the Egyptian theme slapped onto it, but you have color correspondences that are straight up out of Western magic. Days of the week, and it uses the 7 days, not the 10 days of the ancient Egyptian week. And, okay, get this. Okay, it tries to give Egyptian astrology and birth signs, 12 of them, and that's kind of slapping an Egyptian window dressing on the Greek zodiac. And so from February 25th to March 26th is the month of Isis, goddess of order. Should that be Ma'at? And her animal is the cat. And she's a lunar goddess? Huh? Okay. That's something I'd expect to read in an Azure Green catalog, not a book on Egyptian magic. Look, this book is garbage. I would expect to find it in the Footlocker library of an angry, rebellious teenager who is determined to become Fairuza Balk's character from The Craft. And I mean the original, not the sequel. But for anyone serious about ancient Egyptian magic,
don't even bother.
So, what should we do with this book? Our next book is The Way of Cartouche. Gesundheit. Thank you. The Way of Cartouche by Murray Hope. Now, this book's most recent copyright is 1985. But in the introduction, the author claims having 30 years experience working with Egyptian deities / their energy. We shall see. Now, the introduction to this book reads like something out of the 60s or the early 70s, because it talks about the oncoming age of Aquarius, and time and karma, so... This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. New Age much? This book is actually the companion to an oracle deck, which sadly I wasn't able to acquire. I got this on eBay. But it goes through and it explains this oracle deck and claims that it is not a tarot deck, but the first 9 cards in it are major arcana. And it also has 4 elements in it, which, by the way, is not a native Egyptian practice. Neither is tarot, by the way. And the funny thing about this major arcana that it starts with, it says it's the Heliopolitan Aeneid, 9 deities, but I have news for you. Ptah, Bast, and Anubis are not in the Heliopolitan Aeneid. Actually, if you tune into our services every Friday at the end when we make the offerings endure, we go through the Heliopolitan Aeneid plus a handful. 30 years experience and you didn't know this? And the other funny thing is, okay, those 4 elements are associated with the 4 sons of Horus, which kind of misses some important things. Earth, hello, Geb, also Heliopolitan Aeneid. Air, Shu, also Heliopolitan Aeneid. It didn't even do us the decency of putting in Kemetic. That's one of the sons of Horus, and I realize for a lot of folks, like, quick aside, we did a ritual with a local coven 15 years ago, and the high priestess of the local coven is reading with me in, we adapted a quarter calls with the 4 sons of Horus, and this poor lady gets to the name Kemetic, and she just says, "Oh, Jesus." In the middle of her rituals. So I understand if it's a little bit challenging material for somebody, you know, who's not steeped in this. But again, if you're claiming 30 years experience, you should be steeped in it by now. Kemetic's name means he cools his brothers. And so, he should be associated with water. But he's not in here. Oh, and by the way, if you're a devotee of Set, you wouldn't like this book because he has a card in here and it represents opposition and negative energy. Sorry, guys. Oh, and what's worse is the author here claims that the worship of Set was a late development in Egyptian history. Wrong! Actually, Set is technically older than Osiris, at least by the historical record. 30 years experience? Really? Look, this book somehow embodies everything that I deal with older New Age neo-pagan folks who think that they're experts just because they dropped acid at a Grateful Dead concert back in the 70s and then hung out with a bunch of Hare Krishnas and thought that was a spiritual experience. I've been dealing with this sort of crap longer than anybody as a bona fide Gen Xer. But leave it to our dear Gen Zer friends to come up with the perfect expression that I want to tell this book, its author, and anybody else like that I've had to deal with who claims to be an expert and doesn't know, you know what? Okay, boomer. Please note, if you're a boomer watching this channel, you're cooler than most. The ones who really need to see this probably never will. Because they're too old to be watching YouTube anyway. Look, the only reason why I am not blowing up this book is because it's almost 40 years old. It's a relic. I mean, look at this. They don't print books like this anymore. I would expect that you'd find this somewhere in a dusty corner of the library, maybe with the card holder in it for, you know, when you check it out. You know, like how they used to do back in the old days. If you find one like that, check in that card to see when it got stamped, because I guarantee you, that day somebody got disappointed. So what should we do with this relic? And so there you have it, our Library of Shame. Hopefully this is giving you more information on what books to avoid, especially what books not to be tempted by, just because they look old and interesting. And as always, hopefully this gives you more pointers for your own practice. Remember, if you like this video, like it of course, subscribe if you haven't already, and be sure to give us a super thanks. And especially if there are topics that you really like, go ahead and hit that super thanks button and tell us about it so I know what things to do more videos of. And be sure to come join our Patreon peeps. If you join Patreon, you get to see this video before anybody else does. Typically, I upload it on Friday for Patreon, and then on Monday, it goes live to YouTube. So you get the whole weekend to watch it before everybody else. Also, you can get outtakes, and then your name in the credits, of course, and for our top peeps, you get to see exclusive videos, like in this case, our behind the scenes of how we tried to get Galvatron to blast a book. And so, for the Kemetic How-To Guide, this is Sharon, wishing you Serenity.
Enjoyed this video? Then be sure to hit like and subscribe to the Kemetic Independent channel. You can also buy my books on Lulu.com, and special thanks to all my Patreon supporters. Join us for updates, outtakes, and exclusive videos only on Patreon. Check the description for links.